I broke all the rules while doing this side seam, and I'm going to show you a quicker, easier way to do the side seam even with beadwork. Stay tuned. Hey sewing friends, I am working on yet another wedding gown. I am trying to figure out how I'm going to get inside this wedding dress. I need to do a bodice alteration, take it in on the sides. So I tried to get up inside, and in the good old days, you used to be able to just go between the layers on the skirt and go right up through the bodice, flip it inside out, do your alteration, and then close it back up. Sometimes, most of the time, you had to open up your seam up here too and open up a couple seams. But nowadays, I'm getting up inside these and finding nothing but dead ends. And I try anyway, because you never know when you're gonna actually get a good one. But no matter which layer I go through this, I can't seem to get to this side seam. I'll bring you in close here in a little bit and show you. There's a side seam that actually has a seam that I need to take in. Now I have showed you in other videos how some of these that are impossible to get into, you can trim around the appliques, move them over. But this one had a true seam, and I kind of wanted to keep it the way it was and also give myself room. This bride possibly might lose more weight, and I did let her know that would be an extra alteration cost if she loses more before her wedding. But I want to make sure that I can get back in here and do the alteration I need to do easily if I need to. So I'm going to try to stick with these side seams, and I'll show you up close here in a minute. So I'm finding myself a way to get in. So I thought, let's do that on camera together, and maybe you guys have another way that you do it. None of my ways are right or wrong. None of your ways are right or wrong. It's just we're learning from each other some different ways to do these modern dresses. I've been getting a lot of these lately. So I'd love to hear in the comments how you would do it, but let me show you how I'm going to do this one. And sometimes I do each one a little different depending on the circumstances, depending on the dress, the maker, how to get in there, all those kind of things. But let me give you one idea of how to do that. Let's take a closer look. So this is what I'm working with. I pinned her sides here. And I also marked in my notes to go a little more than I pinned, just to give her a little more tightness, and in case she loses a little bit more weight, because she's been kind of on a weight loss thing. So I also measured that out like I did in that other video, and I have that on my paperwork. So I also decided to get my purple pin and mark that, so I could open it up and see what I'm up against. So as you can see, there's a seam here. There's a few appliques that are kind of crossing over, but not many. Most of it is just sewn into the seam. So if I can somehow get into that seam, I can just sew it the 1/2 inch I need to go in and then seal it up. But like I said, when I go up inside, I run into where the skirt was sewn on afterwards and the bodice completely sealed up. No matter which layer I go into, it's completely sealed. I tried all the way around it. So what I think I'm gonna do, and what I started to do on the other side, let me take my pins out so I can show you, is since I couldn't get up inside here at all, and to do that wasn't really getting me anywhere. I thought about, you know, kind of unpicking one of these layers and getting up that way. But what I decided to do is this lining tulle layer, it actually has 2 tulle layers that's folded over and it was sewed like that. I just went ahead and unpicked that so I could get to this seam here. And see how much easier that will be if I just sew. I don't know if you can see it. Here is the old seam. Now I'm going to come down my 1/2 inch and sew right through there. And I think I'm going to also, I started to peel back the appliques at the skirt, because I think I'm going to pull the skirt and so I can do a little bit of alteration here to fade it in as well. So that's what I'm going to be doing here. So I've opened this up, and now I'm going to make sure that my armpit area here matches up. I'm going to sew through beads and everything carefully, because I really don't want to unbead this. You could unbead it, sew it, and then put it back. But I've learned on these right here that if I sew very carefully and kind of crank it by hand or even hand stitch it right there, that I can do that, split it open, and have no problem sewing it back into the seam. So I'm going to do that. I like to pin it just to make sure that my start is matching up, my seams here, and that this is matching up. And see, you can see that if I unbead this, that's a lot of beads to unbead and rebead. So right through there, I'm going to try to just sew through it. Let's find out if we can do it. Okay, and before I end up sewing that, the one thing I am going to do, let me put my glasses on, is I'm going to release the skirt from it so that I can fade the skirt in. Of course, I'm going to have to remember to put back on the hanging strap. I always forget those and then have to go back and do that. Do you do that? Forget your hanger straps? Just trying to get some of those appliques away from the skirt so that they could just be tacked back on when I have each of the alterations done. And I'm a pinner. A lot of people won't pin that, but I really like to know that my back section, and I can do that with feeling too, is not bulking up or buckling. And so I really like to pin. That's just who I am. And then I'm going to go ahead and measure back. And I have my purple marks here. I'm just checking them to make sure that, well, I have to have the right side of the measuring tape. Yep, I'm at the half. Yeah. And I just have to remember when I sew this to go a little tighter than I have it marked. Okay, find my presser foot, which always seems to scoot away. By the way, ladies, I don't have it on this one, but on my old presser foot on my other machine, I had put some of that sticky Velcro on the bottom side, the one with the hooks, and just taped it on there, and it worked great. And for some reason, this machine, when I got it, was actually used by my seamstress at the bridal shop for many years before I ever even got to use it. So I never got that Velcro on there, and I need to. I can tell it keeps disappearing. So when you are doing beads, you have to be careful because those beads are going to hit your needle. So I usually have my hand, I don't know if you can see it, I keep my hand right here on my thing. I pedal very slowly, and I may even just do a bunch of hand cranking to get through a section of beads that I know is heavy. There are different types of beads that will allow you to sew through them. Now you will probably break a few needles, so don't be surprised if this breaks a needle. But as you do this, you'll get used to which beads you're going to be okay kind of sewing around. These are seed beads, and they're very round. So most of the time my needle just kind of slips right around them unless it catches them just right. So sequins you can usually sew through. You will, especially if you have multiple sequins, you will break needles. What I do is when I have needles that are nicked, so you're sewing on the chiffon and they kind of snag, I take that needle out, put a new needle in, and I save my needles that have like a little nick in them. And during this sewing with beads, as I break a needle, I just use ones that are already nicked. Like I just put them in a pin cushion right here, and so they're good needles, they just won't do chiffon. Let me check, make sure I'm not getting off track here. And I am about to hit a spot with a lot of, you can feel it. That has, oh, whoop, there it went. It bent it. So here we go. First needle, but I'm almost to the end. So that's only one needle. Come on. Still a little easier. And I know a lot of you are gonna say that I should have removed my beads, but sometimes you are just doing so many dresses, you don't have time for a lot of fancy beadwork. And usually when you remove the beads, now I would remove like, there's a lot of beads that I would remove. There's some more squared off beads that do not do well. There are the silver encased beads. You have to remove those. These just happen to be a bunch of seed beads and sequins. Let's start again. And this is the spot where I'm going to hand crank past this really difficult spot. It has a lot of beads right here. I'm just hand cranking. I should probably move the camera so you can see my hand over here. Okay, so you can see me on this side. Kind of. Okay, now I'm to a part where I can go a little bit. And during that spot, I may even give it a little backwards just to give it some security. Uh-oh. That. There we go. I'm right here at the end. Let me take you in close again over here. Okay, right here at the end. I'll try to stay out of your way, but and I definitely want right here at the armpit. I'm going to probably back up and give it some more good stuff. Okay, let's see what it looks like on the inside. Can you see that? Actually, did really, really good. The only problem I ran into was these bigger seed beads, and so I had to work my way around them, but it looks pretty good. And now, a lot of times I would leave this excess until I did a fitting, but I know she's from out of town. I also know that she's been on a weight loss journey and been going that direction. So I think here's my seam. Here's the old seam, and I think I'm going to cut it just to get this excess because it is a see-through bodice. So I'm going to trim that, and then once I trim that, I'm going to fold it over and hand stitch. I think I'll just hand stitch back, or I could do stitching in the ditch, but I don't think I want to deal with more beads, so I'm probably going to hand stitch that back. And that, well, not completely done because I need to really quickly fade in the skirt at the same distance, and I'll show you how to do that too. But let me trim this first. Got to make sure this is out of the way so I don't accidentally cut that. Make sure that everything is out of the way. And I don't usually cut right here, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. Let's see. I may just leave. Oh, I also wanted to show you. I don't know if you can see, but their seam, they actually sewed right through the beadwork and all of the sequins. So I didn't do anything different than the manufacturer did, because I can feel all those. And I actually decided to just cut on the other side of their stitch so that I just kind of kept that together and kept it from fraying and beadwork and stuff disappearing. But so that's going to be, once I press it and everything, that's going to look really nice. It's just going to look like it did when I started. So here is one of the lining layers. Here's another of the lining layers. This is the top of the skirt. This is where it's connected to the bodice. And I've taken the bodice in the 1/2 inch. So I'm going to also at the top of the skirt do the same so it can just be eased in with the bodice. And so I would mark it here, and then I would take my sewing and just sew it. And I just do a very slow and steady. I don't want any sharp, I don't want it to look like I sewed it. I want it to fade right into it. So I'm going to use my pen and show you, just so it's easy on camera. It's hard because this is pulling funny, but okay, so I'm just gonna, I would take, whoop, it's harder to do it like this than on the sewing machine. And this is really crooked, but something like that. And I would just keep fading, and then sew along that seam for a while and then backstitch. So, except for the fact that that's not straight, you can see I'm gonna just fade that skirt back in so that each layer, I'm gonna do that on every single layer of the skirt so that I can then connect it to the bodice. Actually, I'm gonna take this off so I can get a little closer. I only took this off because I was trying to go at a funny angle to get a good camera shot, and it's hard to sew at weird angles. Now this is a French seam, which means it's been sewed 2 different directions to seal it off. I'll have to do a video on showing you how to do a French seam. So sometimes if I'm taking quite a bit off and this seam is going to show, I will actually unpick it and redo the French seam. But because this is under 2 more layers of tulle, lace, and appliques, I'm going to go ahead and just treat this like a normal seam. And there is the snagged needle pulling, so not only chiffon but also organza. This may be more of a chiffon than an organza. And I don't like my color of thread on there, even though this whole dress is done in the more of the, not taupe, the kind of a deeper ivory. This part was in the, I'm going to see how that looks. I may change that out to be white thread. We'll see when I get up to the finished product. So, and I will do the same with my tulle layers, and then we'll put it all together, okay? So as you can see, it actually looks really, really nice. If you did a purple line, this is the time that you want to dot it out. The purple is, though, disappearing with air, so it will, if you don't have if you have a while till her next appointment, it'll just disappear on its own. And this is just a baby wipe. I get Huggies that are no perfumes, no dyes, no scents, you know, anything like that. And then here is the other side. I'm just putting it back the way that it was. So you could go inside and sew this lining piece with your machine, but it's just as easy to do like a little slip stitch and sew that. And then once I've got that sewn, I'll put my skirt back together. Also, I wanted to show you, I read my notes for the next step, and she actually needs me to move, this is where her strap goes, and it's too far off her shoulder. So we're gonna move it inward. So I'm gonna take that point, and we're also gonna lower the armpit there. So I didn't need to, in the end, sew through the beads that were right here at the end. This, lucky, was on a strip of fabric that they just sewed on. So if you have like edging here, check to see if it can just be removed out of your way to finish what you need to do and then put it back. I am going to, in another moment, I probably won't record that one, I'm just going to lower her armpit, and then I'm going to sew this back on, and I'm going to change the point of the back to be closer to the middle of her back, and then reattach that. But right now we're just dealing with this, but I thought I'd show you why this is removed. I'm trying to find the best thread for this tulle color. And I think when it's a spool like this, I really like this color, but it is a little bit on the white. This, I feel like singly matches best, but I think once I get stitching, it's just going to look dirty in there. So I think, because this is a little too yellow, and this has more of a pink, I'm going to try that, and hopefully it doesn't stand out too much. See. Okay, so I have sewn it together, pressed it, hand stitched the lining back. This part is all done, and now I've got my skirt separate from my bodice. So if you notice, I've got kind of a mess of appliques. I'm going to save these to the end, and when I put it all back together, I'm going to lay that back together and hand stitch it. But let's go up and under. So I find the spot where the two linings meet, and that is where everything gets kind of put back together, and you'll get all of your layers, get them all straightened out. And I'm gonna just layer by layer match up that side seam. And then I'm going to, let me grab my pins. Kind of pin all of the side seams together. And then straighten everything out. Try to get all my seams in and the appliques out. And I can feel the bump of the appliques, so I'm trying to push them below the seam line because I'm going to sew across here. These new knits are actually harder to work with than when we used to work with just satin and there was no stretch to anything, because it was a very solid piece to work with. You had some structure to it. Okay, so I'm going to sew across here. Make sure that these are laying the right way. One thing I've also learned through the years is when you have excess fabric like this, if you just put it down and sew it, a lot of times it's going to pull right here. So you need to almost pull it down a little bit to give it some play, because otherwise you're going to be back there seam ripping. So I always pull it down just a little bit, pin it in place, and that way on both sides you got some, you don't have it pucker. It would just, right where the skirt is, it would pull it up if you didn't have it with a little bit of play. Okay, I'm going to do that, and then we'll inside it out and then hand sew the appliques back on. Okay, yay, just like that, another alteration is done. And this one, you know, couldn't have been any easier. I mean, there was some handwork that I had to do, and right through here to put the skirt back together. But overall, pretty easy, pretty simple, simple as bridal alterations go. And I'll put in some close-ups where how you can see the seam, and it's exactly the way that the manufacturer, the designer, did it. So I try to always return my gowns back to kind of the original designer's idea, to the best of my ability. Or sometimes I'll change it to be a little bit better, but usually just about the same as they bought the dress. So, and I did off camera, this V was like over here and going off of her shoulders and was quite big on her, and she had more narrow shoulders. So I moved my point in by shortening that, which also opened up the armpit right there too. So I did a little work on that, but just like that, we're done with the bodice, and now I'm on to the hem. So I'll finish this one up, and then I'll be on to my next wedding gown. Happy sewing, everyone. Love you. Have a wonderful day. Mwah.